Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Urban Living Lab, the side event co-hosted by Delta Electronics Foundation and Technical University of Berlin. My name is Eveline, and I'm from Delta Electronics Foundation. I will facilitate the session today. So, as we all know, cities in these centuries are facing a lot of different challenges. And I would say one of them is that the sheer density of people who rely on the fossil fuel would make urban population more vulnerable to not just climate change, but also air pollution. So we really need some solutions for cities. And one way that we can do is that we decarbonize urban transportation as well as the energy system. And we also can make some transformation change for them. And I'm so pleased that today in our session, we have 6 distinguished speakers. They respectively from the Universität, some business foundations, global think tank, as well as the academic unit. And they will be here to propose the solutions for city together. So please allow me to introduce our first speaker, who is Oliver, and he is from the Technical University of Berlin, and he will join us virtually and launch the Urban Living Lab Center later on. And then we have the virtual intervention from Stephanie, who is representing Universität, and she will introduce some sustainable projects that are implemented in cities. And then we have Juma and Georgia from Eveline. They will have some introductions about eco-mobility initiative as well as the sustainable energy systems that support city in transition. And then we have Mr. Wing Zhang from Delta Electronics Foundation. He will propose some solutions that can literally zero out the carbon emission in cities. And our last, but definitely not least, speaker is Du Song from Virginia Tech. He will talk about some innovative and novel technologies that can realize urban and world's sustainable energy abundance. Okay, I think I will just stop here and look forward to our speaker's remark. And I firstly would like to yield the floor to our first speaker, Oliver. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and great to see you all, and wonderful to join you. I think the slides are coming up, I suppose. So it's great to be here also with my dear friends and colleagues, Stephanie, Georgia, and Tumi. Together, we're then sharing a little bit from our living work on the ground. That is sort of the founding element of the Urban Living Lab Center that we're in the process of developing and launching. So if we'd go to the next one. Perfect. Yeah, right. So this Living Lab Center builds on a range of activities and projects that we are co-developing with our partner cities all around the world. And if we go to the next one, where we combine our academic work in our partner universities with our down-to-earth local climate action in the partner cities. We do believe that there is a great transformative potential in urban living labs, hence also the focus of this session here, where we can showcase some of the sustainable, inclusive, low-carbon development solutions that can be tested and replicated all around the world, that can have direct potential to deliver on the Paris Agreement, on the new urban agenda, and provide opportunities for local companies and stakeholders, and also provide a basis for local coalitions that is so important for the long-term trajectory. If we go to the next one. So the way we test our innovations in the context of an urban living lab is through a 5-pillared approach, where we inform our local public and private sector partners on all the low carbon development solutions that are out there. And this is sort of refeaturing in all the 3 projects that you will hear this morning or this early afternoon. Solutions, Urban Pathways and SESA, where we provide a basket of solutions that partners in cities and private sector can take up. And then we facilitate peer-to-peer exchange, which is meant to inspire, to take up those solutions, learn from failures and success as well. And then that leads to the initiation of partnerships that take on those solutions also beyond the testing in the urban living lab, and then where we can start implementing demonstration activities and then take them further into a scaled up and replicable case that can really have the impact that we so urgently need for global climate action. To the next one, please. And that builds on a number of projects. The most prominent are the ones that you will hear from the team in a second. Sort of the mothership of those projects is the Urban Pathways partnership, where we develop a range of partnerships and pilot demonstration concepts that have a transformative potential. The first important pillar then on the mobility side is SOLUTIONSplus, which is supported by the EU. Urban Pathways is supported by the German government, by the International Climate Initiative, and a project that we just recently launched with our friends from ICLE, SESA, focusing on energy access in Africa, also an EU-funded project. So all of them create a knowledge base and a base for living labs all around the world, where we connect our training and living lab work. Next one, please. And this is sort of the basic logic of the Urban Living Lab Center, which structures on our work in the urban living labs with content development, or curricular development, business model development, and PhD thesis in joint labs, and then the development of trainings, support for local entrepreneurs, and linkages to master's program in regional hubs. Next. And this builds on already existing consortia and universities that are involved in those consortia in the living lab environments, and pulls the academic and the practical work together. Next. And we have the pleasure to start this partnership with the Technical University Berlin, the Wuppertal Institute, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And this will then become the first collaborating center of UN Habitat to further condense and expand the knowledge products as well as the dissemination of those. Next. The partners, MIT, TUB, and Wuppertal Institute will host visiting researchers and external master's and PhD students, and collaborate on that very closely with the partner universities in the regions. And the center in itself will develop the course curricula and the facilitating program around the Living Lab Center. Next. The ways, this is an open partnership, and people are welcome to join this partnership as hosts or co-hosts of labs or hubs, bring in PhD or master's candidates, and weave in bachelor's and master's programs into this joint capacity building program. Next. I realize I need to hurry up a bit. And what we're currently doing is setting up the regional hubs with several of our partner universities, so that we can link directly to the local work, but also facilitate regional exchange and embed this in regional programs. And similarly, next, we are setting up thematic hubs around some of the key topical areas that we're working in our living labs and projects, so that we connect both the in-depth studies and the local trainings and living lab work. Next. One of the key pillars to connect the labs and hubs and the living labs is the fellowship program, where we have a structured program for young professionals and senior professionals and facilitate their professional development and support them with placements in partner universities and partner cities. Next. That also goes along with joint appointments, co-supervision of masters and PhD students, and postdoc fellowships, as well as field trip and data collection support from the center. All of which goes to hand in hand with our living lab work in each of our partner cities. Next. And just one of the, just some of the examples of some of the capacity building modules that are currently being developed, where we focus on the different thematic areas, on the key urban basic services that we are working on, and more of them are coming. So please watch this space. Next and last. Thank you very much. And handing over now to my colleague Stephanie from UN Habitat for an introduction on urban pathways. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Oliver. I think it sounds a very interesting project that really get a lot of different stakeholders involved. And I believe it's also established a fundamental basis for cities to go sustainability. So now I would like to invite Stephanie to elaborate more on your project launched by UN Habitat or other institution. Thank you.
Thank you so much both for the introduction. So my name is Stephanie Holzwart and I work in the urban mobility team at the United Nations Human Settlements Program, and I'm going to introduce a project that Oliver already mentioned. It's a project called Urban Pathways, which is supported by the International Climate Initiative and implemented by the Wuppertal Institute, UN Environment, and UN Habitat. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the Urban Pathways project aims to make an active contribution to the global climate change targets towards the 1.5 stabilization pathways, and we're really trying to unlock the emission reduction potential of different sectors, including urban mobility, planning, waste management sectors, and also the energy sector. The way that we do that is through technical assistance and policy advice on local implementation action plans, as well as support on pilot projects. And I'm going to introduce a few of them here. We could go to the next slide. So one concept that we have very much disseminated and promoting is the concept of ecozones. And we have really promoted that through training and capacity building to various of our partner cities, where we have supported tactical urbanism, awareness raising, and community participation in collaboration with the city governments, for example, as part of mobility weeks, car-free days, or walking and cycling to school events. Next slide, please. Some of those cities have then taken up the ecozone concept for implementation. I think the beautiful component of ecozones is really its integrated character, where we're linking different sectors among each other, for example, mobility, energy, or waste. And on the right side, you can see one of the ecozone implementations that has taken place already in Belo Horizonte in Brazil, and is currently being upscaled from the pilot project across different neighborhoods in the city. Next slide, please. In terms of waste management, Urban Pathways has supported the development of the Waste by Cities tool, where we are looking at better data collection and therefore also better management for the aspect of solid waste. waste and especially its separation and composting has also been part of the ecozones that I have already mentioned. And we're currently also looking at supporting some of our cities on the issue of e-waste, especially in relation to electric mobility. We can go to the next slide. Talking about electric mobility, we have also supported various cities in the development of pilot concepts on innovative and integrated electric mobility solutions for passenger and for freight transport, and they are now being implemented and uptaken by the SOLUTIONSplus project that Oliver already mentioned before, which is an EC-funded project. In terms of energy, we have supported a pilot project on an energy-efficient tiny house, and more pilot projects are now being taken up by the SESA project and will be introduced by our colleagues from ICLE in a bit. Next slide, please. Urban Pathways has also supported air quality monitoring, partly to measure the impact of some of the initiatives that we have undertaken. And we have, for example, engaged in citizen science, where we train students in Nairobi on the development and deployment of low-cost monitoring devices. But we have also, for example, worked with UNEP and IQAir on the world's largest platform for air quality. And we're currently developing an air quality decision maker support system, which will help Quito, Kathmandu, and Kigali in better evidence-based policy making on the transport front. Next slide. Oliver already mentioned the Urban Changemaker Group. Here we're really trying to link the urban living labs that I have just introduced with the academic work and the academic efforts, and that is done through blended learning, peer-to-peer exchange, but also capacity building and innovation hubs in the regions where we're working. And lastly, on the next slide, in terms of exploitation and sustainability, Oliver already mentioned the Urban Living Lab Center that's currently being launched, which will really be institutionalizing, let's say, this approach of urban living labs with a multitude of partners. And we have also worked on the newer campus, which is really, let's say, the resource base for all the capacity building materials and knowledge products that have come out from Urban Pathways. And with that, I'll be handing back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, I think you just proposed a lot of amazing projects that can help city in different areas to go on sustainability. And I think one of the projects that you mentioned, SOLUTIONSplus, our speaker to me, she is also getting involved in that project. So could you offer us more detail about this project?
Thank you very much. So, good morning, everyone. This is Tumi. I'm the head of sustainable mobility at ICLE, our secretariat, and I have the pleasure of sharing with you some information about SOLUTIONSplus, which is a project coordinated by Oliver and where also Stephanie is involved. The SOLUTIONSplus project is aims at accelerating the transitions towards sustainable electrification in urban mobility and targets larger cities in developing and emerging economies. The project is halfway through, so we have some preliminary results, and in particular, it's important to highlight how the richness of these partnerships with more than 40 different partners and also more than 100 different associated partners, and the existence of 10 different living labs in different cities. The overall objective is to create an ecosystem for e-mobility and accelerate this transition, as I mentioned before, and this is achieved through three different areas, from the vehicle perspective, the operations perspective, and the integration. From the vehicle is about the deployment, but also the business model of new type of vehicles, and on the operational side, it's all about how to enable these vehicles, and on integration is how to ensure that there is integration across the different mode of transports. This project, the SOLUTIONSplus project, is also organized in collaboration and with a strong partnership and synergy with a sister program that is led by the UN Environment, IEA, and the Global Environment Facility. So the SOLUTIONSplus concept has 5 different pillars, and which Oliver has already shared before: information, inspire, initiate, implement, and impact. From the information perspective, is really to equip the different partners with the best tools that are available, also leveraging the different partnerships that are involved. Inspiration is how the different practitioners and first movers are able to inspire each other. Initiate is about building new partnerships and also finding new ways of creating change, and implementing is putting everything into practice in these 10 different living labs, and impact is then bringing all this type of innovation into the real world. So the SOLUTIONSplus toolbox is one of the first tools that have been released, and just in these days actually, and there are different areas. And the toolbox is available now. The platform has been co-organized with the UN Environment and program, and there is a search functionality, different tools, methodologies that have been compiled by different partners. Then under the pillar of inspiring, then the SOLUTIONSplus partnerships have developed a host of different capacity building opportunities, and on the peer-to-peer exchanges. And in particular, there was a series of webinars around the living labs so that the partners could also exchange and ensure that the different solutions were leveraging the collective knowledge of the different partners across different sectors and also across different levels of government. Then another element that brings this to new partnerships and business models, we have there are different startups, incubators, in which new type of innovations is brought to implementation and also to foster local new startups. And these are an instrumental element for the different living labs that are available in the project. The type of living labs and solutions that are implemented currently in the project or in the planning of this project. Just to give us some examples, in Quito, they're looking into the implementation of low emission zones. In Kigali, they're looking into the last mile connectivity and different e-mobility solutions for last mile connectivity. In Madrid, they are looking, for instance, in smart charging infrastructure and also testing some inverted pantograph, so better type of infrastructure also for e-buses. In Kathmandu, they're looking into, for instance, refurbishing e-buses, creating an e-mobility ecosystem, or and also perhaps procuring new buses, e-mobility buses, electric buses. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you to me. I personally feel this project is like super important because sometimes when we interact with the local government, they don't really know how to do sustainable things, especially in the transport sector. So I think it's a very good tool and good way to build their capacity in this area, and we really look forward to seeing more achievement coming. So now I'm gonna yield the floor to Georgia from Italy. We know Italy are doing a lot of things to propose the policy and advice to cities, and I think you're gonna tackle the energy systems in city. How can cities do more sustainable in this area, please?
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and thank you for the invitation. And thank you also to all of my colleagues here. They've done a great job to set me up and provide most of the information. Hopefully, I can also trigger a little bit of your interest now from my side with the experience of SESA. So yes, my name is Giorgia Rambelli. I'm the coordinator for climate policy and energy governance at the European Secretariat of ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability. We are a network of cities, towns, regions, and provinces, all committed, but not only committed, actually trying to implement as fast as possible and as coherently as possible sustainable development across the world. So SESA, which I'm presenting today, stands for Smart Energy Solution for Africa. And it's a 4-year project that is funded by the European Union, in particular, through the Horizon 2020 program. And it actually just started. It started on the 1st of October. So it's a brand new initiative that we just kicked off. So in terms of what is SESA's objective, so we are trying to mitigate climate change, but also to avoid lock-in situation, while at the same time also improving access to sustainable energy and in affordable and reliable conditions. So we are using a cross-sectoral, but also a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach, which is at the core of the activities that we are rolling out within our partnership. Really trying to look into how we can best harness the potential of the already existing opportunities that are in the African continent. So really trying to use what is already there as much as possible, building upon it, combining it together with technical and financial innovation to support the development of leapfrogging sustainable energy solutions. So you already saw inform, inspire, implement, initiate, and impact. These are the 5 pillars that have already been explained, so I don't have much to add to that. I just would like to zoom in particular, in a couple of those. I think one special feature of SESA is the inspire part, because of course we want to facilitate exchange as much as possible among our African living labs and our African partners, but also we are really constructively trying to create a knowledge exchange with cities and communities in Europe as much as possible. The other aspect, the other pillar that I want to focus on, of course, is the initiate part, where we are really looking into enabling innovation as much as possible. Looking not only into technical solutions, but also into new business models and new ways also to support the local economy. And then finally, I think the impact is at the very core of our activities, and you will hear a little bit more about how we are trying to roll that out through our living labs in particular, which will be basically at the core of all the actions that we are implementing throughout all these different pillars. So all of that will provide us the opportunity to deliver on a number of different outputs. Again, I will not go through all of them. Of course, we will develop new solutions, and we will test them out, and these will have impact in terms of reduction of emissions, reduction of waste. But we are also planning to really inform and to build capacity of expert practitioners and official directly on the ground, so that we can have, let's say, a sustainability approach also beyond the lifetime of our 4 years project, of course, and continue seeing what we have, the seeds that we have helped bringing about in these communities also to continue for the future. So in practice, what are we going to do? We have a number of demonstration sites that we will be utilizing for our research, but also for our implementation. We will start from one specific co-developed demonstration taking place in Kenya in particular, in our first living lab. And then from there, we will try to validate the different aspects and the different solutions that we are rolling out in Kenya in 4 different countries, in different socioeconomic environments, to really test how these solutions can be improved, fine-tuned, but also how can they fit into different contexts. So we will do that in Ghana, in South Africa, in Malawi, and in Morocco. Learning from all of this, so learning from the demonstration, learning from the validation, we will then roll out a number of in a number of 4 more additional partner countries. Some of those are still to be defined. Our replication. So we are really trying to scale up this as much as possible, also across different contexts. in terms of the type of technology that we are going to be testing, so these are just some examples of the technology that we are planning to roll out. We will look into decentralized renewable energy. Of course, this is at the very core of our project in particular, but we will also look into smart microgrids. We will look into second life of electric vehicles. We will look into solution from waste and biogas to energy. So really trying to provide also a number of different solutions that can be valuable for different contexts. So why are we doing living labs in SESA and why are they crucial? Well, of course, there is the demonstration angle and the fact that we can test and validate our technologies, but it's also important for us because we have the opportunity to provide solutions that are representing the needs not only of the urban context, but also the rural one. We can also address the very increasingly important nexus between the energy system, for example, and other type of processes, water, for example, but also food. We also, of course, want to obviously provide a sustainable energy access as much as possible to our communities. And then finally, last but not the least, of course, create as much as possible green growth and employment on the ground. So I think this is particularly important, once again, to highlight how we are not just testing solutions, but also trying to accompany them with business models. So in terms of what is our first living lab that we are going to be rolling out our demonstrations from. So we are starting from Kenya, as I mentioned. So in particular from Lake Victoria. So Lake Victoria is, of course, an important, crucial source of revenues for the entire country and for the community that lives there. It's the largest part of the fish that is being distributed and used across the country is coming from this specific lake, but also is the source of the place where most of the irrigation schemes are coming from and are dependent on it. So it's a particularly crucial, important location also for the agricultural sector, not only, but also, of course, the fishing sector, many others. And there are a lot also small businesses and smaller community schemes that are depending in particular from this specific area and this specific lake. So we selected this strategically to really also have an impact right on the ground. And we will be trying to really create opportunity as much as possible to test out the solutions there and to see how they can be replicated and they can be scaled up also in the future to really also connect with sectors, for example, like cooking, lighting, water pumping, mobility, waste management, and combining all of this with a number of info spots that will be set up on the ground to access information and to, again, capacitize as much as possible people so that they can continue, of course, also beyond the lifetime of our project with their activities. So here, just a quick preview of what the first, let's say, living labs that we are going to be engaging in terms of validation are. So I mentioned already the countries, Malawi, South Africa, Morocco, and Ghana, and we will look into batteries in particular, but we will look also into second life electric vehicles, and we will look, of course, also in all the different approaches around biogas for cooking and different ways also of connecting to the clean water and agricultural system in rural areas. So many different technologies to test, lots of different new sites, and a lot of excitement since we are just starting now with this project. So I just finish by saying we just started, as I mentioned. We would love to keep in touch with all of you, and if you, of course, have any question or you want to learn more or follow our progress, our success, I'm hoping you can, of course, keep in touch with us and ask any question at any time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That's very excellent. Well, I actually see a highlight in your project, which is you just try to utilize every source at hand to produce energy. So you include the battery, you include the PV, and even the second life EV batteries. And I think it's very necessary for African countries where they lack of the sufficient energy access. Yeah, I'm really look forward to this project as well. Okay, so now I will hand over the time to Mr. Wing Zhang. He will tell us some solutions that we can use to zero out the carbon emissions in cities, please.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to report on Delta's initiative that help mitigate climate change and air pollution in cities. For many years, science has been telling us that climate change and air pollution are two sides of the same coin. And tackling one of them can definitely help mitigate another one. Delta Electronics, as a global citizen, has been for 50 years devoted to enhance energy efficiency. We keep cooperating with our partners to enable innovative solutions globally. We are the member of the EV100 and the IE100 initiative. We also joined the campaign of Race to Zero. Delta has announced to achieve carbon neutral by 2030 through our internal carbon price of $300. To tackle carbon emission and air pollution in cities, transport has been always the priority area for improvement. In many countries, around 1/4 of the PM 2.5 comes from the transport sector. We need to improve the situation by electrifying transports. Delta has been in the EV supply chain for almost 15 years. We offer diverse product solutions, including EV charging system, onboard charger, and the traction motors, etc. So if you have the electronic vehicle, then I would say it probably powered, even driven by Delta now. However, it is not enough to just have the products to push eco-mobility forward. We need cities, companies, and drivers get involved to facilitate the switch to electronic vehicle. This year, Delta Foundation cooperates with Uber-like electronic car sharing service to monitor street-level air pollution in Taiwan. We installed the PM 2.5 and CO sensors on the car fleet and transfer the data into a map accessible and understandable for people. As you can see, the maps show you which streets are highly polluted and how serious they are. Then we can use the real-time data to persuade policymakers to set up air quality management area to potentially vulnerable groups such as children, and they urge more people to adopt electronic vehicles. I myself drive the electronic vehicle, so I can understand the barriers people face when using it, especially we call it range anxiety. It's definitely the top one. To solve this problem, you need to change a little habit when using your car. And of course, the government needs to popularize the installation of the ultra-fast charger. Delta has developed ultra-fast charger with the capacity of 315 plus kilowatts. It allows a 15 kilowatt-hour EV battery to charge to 90% in 7 minutes. These 7 minutes are equal to adding another 300 kilometers, almost like what you stay in a petrol station today. Such a technology popularization can surely help more users switch to electronic vehicles. However, on the way to promote EVs, we also have to consider the risk EVs may overload the power grid. Smart charging and the vehicle-to-grid system will be two of the solutions for the risk. They do not only make the grid more stable, but also can turn the EV batteries into virtual power plants. We launched a research to explore how V2G system contributes to energy resilience in Taiwan. In our research, we found that V2G can cut the peak and off-peak gap of the network from 39% to 18%. This 21% difference is equal to 5 gigawatt power in Taiwan, or 16 small coal power plants with the capacity up to 300 megawatts. This technology is not popular at the current stage, but very necessary to power grid stability, and when more and more the EV comes. Another solution that can help minimize grid overload is energy storage system. We provide such a system on an island with 10,000 people and stabilize the grid by quickly supplying backup power. So far in this year, it has been activated for 61 times to stabilize power supply. In further optimize grid efficiency and coordinates with the energy supply through demand management, power dispatch, and renewable energy smoothing. I particularly want to use an extreme case to wrap up my presentation. It is the Namasha Elementary School. In the year 2009, the school was destroyed by a typhoon with 2,700 millimeter precipitation in 4 days. After the disaster, Delta Foundation helped the local people rebuild the school and equipped it with the solar PV, energy storage system, and a power conditioning system. The school now is serving as a shelter for thousands of villagers during typhoon in the past 10 years. It also achieved net zero energy consumption for at least 3 years and is applying for US Green Building Council net zero certification now. I will ascribe this case to the perfect distributed energy system, DERS. I also believe it will be one of the solutions for our net zero future. When we do our best to zero out carbon emissions this way, we can effectively improve air quality and save lives. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Wing. I think from your presentations, we can actually find a very interesting point, which is when the number of EV increases, then our electric grid might be affected. So we may need to think about how can we build the energy resilience and abundance in our city. And now I would like to ask Mr. Trevisan to present about this area. He is very professional regarding the energy system. So let's have him to.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are now. First, I would like to thank Delta Foundation and personally Win and Yvonne, as well as Berlin Free University and Clean Air Initiative for inviting me to contribute to this side event. My research group, the Center for Power Electronic Systems, has collaborated with the Delta Electronics for 30 years on researching how to provide power to computers, phones, internet, cars more efficiently. And now I'm extremely happy that we are continuing this collaboration now with even greater ambition. How to provide power to humanity more efficiently. If we do not want to pollute ourselves out of existence, and if we want to have happier lives, I would like to share with you, hopeful story about how most advanced power electronics technologies that Delta and CPES are exploring could be used not only to make for urban living efficient and enjoyable, but also how they could be scaled up to reach global sustainable energy abundance, when every human being will have all the energy they need and where all the energy will be supplied with net zero carbon emissions. Most of the energy consumption in urban house that is shown could be provided by electricity. Much of it comes from electric grid, which could be green or not. After going through the power meter and the breaker panel, electric wires distribute electricity around the house. If we want to be green, we could add solar panels and connect them to the internet wiring. Let us explore in more detail now how this is being done and how it could be done in the newest technologies are used. This shows a schematic diagram of today's electrical system in an urban house. Smart appliances save energy and make our lives more enjoyable. But one thing to notice is that all electrical appliances have front-end rectifiers, because no modern appliance uses 50 Hertz AC electricity coming from the grid. Integration of grid renewables and storage saves the planet Earth, as we just heard. But electric vehicles also could be used to store electricity for driving, but also to feed it back to the grid. This bidirectional charger that Wim just described before, and which we work together, which connects the electrical power system of the car with the electrical power system of the house, we can call electronic energy router. But none of these renewable sources or storage produce 50 Hertz AC electricity to the grid. All of them require DC-AC inverters before they can be connected to the grid. Well, that's a nice business opportunity for Delta and us to sell more converters, but this is the wrong way to go. Since none of the modern users that produce electricity use 50 Hertz alternating current on the grid, let's simplify the system by placing an electronic energy router just where it connects to the grid, where we need it. We don't need it anywhere else. In this new electronic DC distribution system, there are fewer components, efficiency and reliability are higher, cost is at the end lower, and there could be much greater attractiveness and convenience. On this last point on attractiveness and convenience, to show how we can increase joy of life while saving energy, Virginia Tech professors and almost 100 students built the Future House and demonstrated it in many places. It has an advanced electronic power system with net zero energy consumption, including charging of an electric vehicle. Its whole roof is covered with solar panels, as is shown on this photo of the Future House when it was shown in the Times Square in New York City. The effort was part of the Solar Decathlon competition, and the house won the first place in the finals in Dubai in United Arab Emirates in 2018. It is a beautiful house inside as well, with wireless power transfer to the walls, which could be pushed back and forth and easily moved, possibility to have induction cooking and wireless phone charging from the same surface, your table, and many other new technologies. If we can build and demonstrate electronic cars and electronic houses, can we scale that up to build an electronic net zero world? As we just said, an electric car is a small electronic power system which could be considered what I call the picogrid, a little grid that's inside the car. It is connected to a house through a bidirectional charger that we just mentioned, which is a pico electronic energy router. This car can receive the power from the house, or it can send it back when necessary. As we just said, similarly, a new house with the electronic power system, as we just described, is a nanogrid, a little bit bigger grid, connected to the local microgrid through a nano-electronic energy router. It can receive power from the microgrid, or it can send it back when necessary. We can continue to build a hierarchy in a similar way. Microgrids are connected to the urban milligrid through a micro-electronic energy router. The microgrids can receive energy from the milligrid, but they can also then feed it back because they have their local generations, distributed generation and storage. And so on. Milligrids are connected to the regional grid through a small milli-electronic energy routers. Power can flow from the grid, or it can flow up from the milligrids back. So let us now explore if this new electronic power network can be scaled up to the whole world so that we can provide carbon-free energy for everyone. Earth receives over 14,000 exajoules of energy each day from sun, which is 10,000 times more than human daily usage. Even if in 30 years we would use 10 times more energy to supply 10 billion humans, using per capita twice as much energy as an average American today, it will still be only about 0.1% of energy that is continuously received by Earth from the sun every day. The trick is to use the energy from sun immediately while it is being received, instead of using it after it was first stored over millions of years in the fossil fuels. To simplify discussion, let us assume that all 14 exajoules of daily energy will be coming from PV panels. With today's technology, it will still be less than 20% of unpopulated sunny deserts in the world. However, energy consumption is not where the production is because we do not live in deserts, and our activities change with seasons and between day and night. So it is absolutely necessary to establish a global energy transport network that would continuously balance the varying renewable generation with the varying consumption. There are two big issues: global transport and the need to extremely fast balancing of the power flow. The first issue of global energy supply is over 100 years old. Today, more than 1/3 of world prime energy is traded internationally, although the adjustment of power flow is extremely slow. Still, over the last 70 years, humanity has succeeded to keep global energy supply chains almost uninterrupted, even in the face of many geopolitical crises. And the pandemic is reminding us that global problems must use global solutions. On the other hand, in the last 25 years, we built the global internet. for instantaneous information delivery between any two humans anywhere around the globe. So we know how to transfer electrical signals freely, instantaneously, and reliably around the globe. Can we use this experience to change the power grid? Well, the first thing is that we cannot just attach internet to the old electrical mechanical grid and hope that it will solve everything. Smart grid is not enough. What we need is a completely new electronic power grid, one that can balance varying generation and variable consumption in sub-second time intervals. The latest advancements in power electronics enable us to adjust huge energy flows in a fraction of a second. High voltage direct current technologies are already being deployed around the world for instantaneous transmission of vast amounts of energy through underground and undersea cables over very long distances. It could be calculated that the global intergrid would need thousands of fast HVDC lines around the globe with cumulative power rating of around 9 terawatts to enable instantaneous balancing of the continuously changing peak power demand and generation capacity. Thus, we already have all the basic technologies needed to build the global intergrid, which will be sending packets of electrical energy at the speed of light between any 2 points on the Earth connected by electrical conductors. Based on these calculations, the total cost of the global intergrid, including cables, HVDC stations, and PV panels, is estimated to be around 6% of the global GDP over the next 30 years, which will keep global warming below 1.5 degrees C. So the question is not whether we can do it, because yes, we can. The question is, do we want to do it? And why shall we do it? Because we owe it to humankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dusan. I think from your presentations, it's just make me recall the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi's statement a couple of days ago. And he just said our world should be like one song, one word, and one grid in the future. And my singular style is like coincidentally fitting into this great blueprint. And that's really amazing. Yeah, but I also believe that our energy system should be bi-directional and more feasible, especially under our transport sectors is electrified more and more. Okay, so now we are going to jump into the panel session. Well, I actually have 2 or 3 questions for each speaker, and that's firstly tackle the challenge. So what's the biggest challenge that you think city would face regarding the transition to sustainable mobility and energy system? So Oliver, are you still there?
Still here. Right. So, I mean, not a silver bullet question, short question, long answer, but I'll try to keep it short. One thing, and indeed, I'll echo what my previous colleague just mentioned, is we do have tons of solutions at hand that are readily available and ready to be implemented today. We do not have to wait for any technological breakthroughs. So there is basically no excuse to not do and implement climate action at the local level. And it makes perfect sense as well. So where there is a little bit of a stumbling block very often is manifold, but one element is the lack of capacities, the lack of a good understanding of what solutions would be the most applicable in my city, but also the pure man or woman power to actually implement that. In particular, in small and medium-sized cities, they are very often quite challenged with regard to purely the capacities that they have to implement. And then, of course, we very often say that the financial barrier is the key one. I am not so sure about that, because many financing institutions are jumping around just waiting for projects to be implemented. So I think if we were to focus on building capacities and empowering local authorities, but also local companies to take up viable solutions and make it as easy as possible for them, then that will be a powerful trigger, and the financing will come along the way once they see viable solutions to be funded.
Thank you, Oliver.
Maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, Stephanie, do you want to make some intervention for this question? Stephanie, are you still there? Okay, cool.
There we go.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you very perfectly.
Super. Yeah, I can very much support what Oliver already said, and maybe one additional comment from my side would be that especially I think the capacity to also do cost-benefit analysis, for example, for transport projects, is very much key, because we often see governments engaging on transport projects that are not necessarily, let's say, founded or backed up by a good cost-benefit analysis. And if we would start doing that more, we would very quickly see that investments, for example, in public transport, investments in walking and cycling infrastructure would be highly cost-effective versus, for example, investments.
It seems we have some technical issue regarding, we interrupt. Okay, it's fine. Okay, so let's just move on. So would you mind to have some opinion on these questions? How can we, tackle this challenge, and what are they?
Yeah, I can echo what Oliver has mentioned, and also Stephanie started with, and essentially the technology is there. There are a lot of different solutions, and perhaps one of the challenges is really to see it as a system to a certain extent, because then and ensure that all the different elements are combined, because it's a real challenge in the smaller cities to have the capacity, the technical capacity, but also the business part of building viable projects. But then there is also an institutional barrier sometimes, because essentially for the smaller cities, they are less visible, and it's harder actually to access funding. And that's for cities, it's actually quite a challenge to access funding, actually.
That's a good point. And Georgia?
Well, from my perspective, I think, of course, I also agree with everything that is being shared until now. Maybe one comment on this: there is no excuse to delay further implementation. I also sometimes think, I don't want to here be controversial, of course, but the technology is there. It's not just about technology, though. We cannot wait for technology to solve everything. There needs to be political commitment, and it needs to be rolled out in practice with measures. So I think technology is part, of course, a big part of the solution, but not maybe the unique ingredient that we should rely upon. And maybe related a little bit to that, I think in general, the biggest challenge that I could see working with local governments in general is still also around the framework conditions in which this type of measures are being implemented. By that, I mean there are still unclear, often unstable regulatory frameworks that are not able to send a clear signal to the markets on where do we want to invest, what is actually the criteria that we want to follow when it comes to investment in our projects. And looking, for example, at this lack of alignment across different levels of government when they are rolling out policies and plans, I think this is still something that it's a bit of a challenge. And then not to say, of course, that all of this is just pressed upon local governments. There is also a challenge within the cities themselves, where you have different departments that often might not work with one another, might not think holistically in the way that they are rolling out measures. So I think it's a combination of all of this, and of course, everything that has been already said by the colleagues.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Georgia. So we?
I think the technology is there, everybody will agree. That's why Delta and co-work with the Virginia Polytech have the vehicle to degree this kind of system. But the most important thing is still the political will. And how to push the political will is we must let everybody know the real situation. So we have this kind of the map to let everybody can check it just on their cell phone to see how serious the street air pollution there are. Then they will say why we have to have this kind of worse air to breathe. Yeah, that's what we do to make some pressures, maybe to the local government, maybe to the policymakers, to let more people know the truth of our air.
Okay, so Jiu-sung?
Well, thank you. I do agree, and I think that this, both the questions and the panel was good. The main thing, this is the global problem, must have the global solution, and that so many initiatives are doing this way. The second thing, it has been mentioned, is this political will to make it, to make the change, but it's more, as we mentioned, it's the society, not the politicians will follow the society if the society is there. And to move the whole society to be willing to do that, we have to go and provide the tools and education and reach out to everyone to see how important that is. And my last comment there would be that don't underestimate that this is small and could be done with the small things. Think about how big is, for example, all oil and gas industry in the world. And all of that has to be replaced in 20, 30 years. That's huge. That's huge. That's 5% of everything we do in the world. And unless we have that momentum, it's not going to happen.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think Stephanie is still offline, so let's move on to the next question. So my next one goes to how can we scale up the adoptions of this innovative technology as well as the capacity building in different continents or different country or even the different cities. So Oliver, would you mind to take the first?
Sure. Just a quick one then on this one, because this also goes into our own direction somewhat, and that touches upon what Georgia also said, is very often we're focusing on the big cities, on the big names as well in our projects. So we should also be encouraged ourselves to go beyond that and go to those cities who have even less capacities and are more in need for our direct support where we can. So focusing on the mid-sized cities in particular has first a direct element into their capacity needs, but also into the element of replicability, because there are way more mid-sized cities than there are mega cities. So maybe I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And to me, sorry.
I think it's important to establish the good partnerships during the project, so that and also bring in local governments, but academia and also the private sector to make sure that one of these actors at least will take ownership over these projects and help with the replicability, scalability, and usually, and then also the fact that in all our projects there is this peer-to-peer exchange component, and make sure that we show that this is possible, and not only possible, but it's also viable, and we are ready for it. So that is, that's, and perhaps the best approach would be to have this pilot, and then once this is, there is a proof of concept, then to scale it up and to ensure that there are all the different, that there is a society buy-in, but also the entire industry buy-in.
Georgia?
I think from my perspective, everything that has been said, I fully agree with. Definitely the role of co-creation when it comes in accelerating the implementation is very important. So not to do a little bit of a promo spot on the projects that we have presented, but this Living Lab concept is definitely a proof that you can bring together all of these different actors and do something that it's, making tangible change on the ground. And I think definitely also this idea of not only test through a pilot, but also moving on to validating and to accelerating in other parts of the world. I think it's very, very important and essential. yeah, I think moving away a little bit from this one-on-one pilot process into a more of a vision for application, it's absolutely important.
That's a great remark. And Wing?
To face more adaptation like the V2G technology, I think there's more proper regulation and electricity pricing stage. Just take an example, we need to incentive people to charge their EV at room and discharge it in the evening before they go home, because this is the best for the grid. So we should make a charging price and do cheaper and add some premium for drivers to discharge EV in the evening. The same logic will be used to popularize energy storage and integrate system as well. A good pricing strategy can definitely minimize the impacts of the increased EVs on the electronic grid.
Thank you. And Joo-sung?
Well, the question is what kind of commitments to make that happen. And it is very hard to do it just with having exactly the same paradigm. I pay the gasoline this way and this way, and now this should be cheaper. It may not be cheaper, but it may be better. Now, that means collectively, it was better for the whole society. How we would mobilize the whole society to do that? Remember the highways on which we drive the cars were not built from the gasoline prices. They were built by governments because they thought that's important. Now, we all need to think that this new electric infrastructure is important and have to build it, not try to just recover it from every single car being charged or not charged. The whole system has to be done very differently.
Yes. I think your statement is related to our next question as well. Having this such a big transformation is definitely not easy for citizens or the policymakers. And how can we persuade them to take it? I think communication is very important, but the thing is how we communicate with them. So yeah, this is my questions. And Oliver, are you still there? Oliver, do you hear me?
Sorry, I'm finding the buttons.
Okay.
Right, on the communication side of things, thank you so much for the question, sorry. So first of all, a very important point for communication is finding the unmute button these days at least. And the other one is, of course, and again, that might also be, some homework for the research community in particular, to communicate in a, sensible and target-oriented way, so that we talk to the right, to the people in their language. Which means, if you talk to a transport department, then this is the perspective that you give. If you try to convince a treasury department, then certainly you highlight the economics of it and the cost and benefits of the project that is being proposed. So a more target-oriented communication is certainly something that can be quite a helpful trigger.
Thank you. And to me?
I think in every mobility project, you have to do stakeholders engagement, and so that you understand what the needs are and ensure that the project is also meeting the needs and the context. Part of the problem is that people don't feel heard, and that it's quite time-consuming process, but it's one that is relevant, especially when for mobility, because it really influences how you move and how the city is shaped. And at the same time, it's not only stakeholders externally, but also internally, like within the government, for instance. So different departments might be involved, and that's also important to have internal stakeholders engagement.
Okay, and Georgia?
So from my perspective, I think well, one of the things that we could focus more is this entire system around co-benefits of what we are doing. Yeah. So talking about what type of impact these measures will have on the real day-to-day life of our citizens. Of course, so we were talking about air pollution a few minutes ago. I think absolutely that's one indicator, but also health in general, access, regeneration of areas. So it really opens up a full range of opportunity to really rebuild our local urban system. The other thing, I think it's about talking around the return on investment of these measures. We always talk, of course, about the monetary return on investment, but there is also a social return on investment beyond just the environmental one. And then maybe one more message that I think could be worth it to piggyback a little bit more on, it's how much is it going to cost us if we are not going to be investing into these changes that are needed? So this idea of the cost of inaction, how much is that going to cost us if we don't make the shift and the change that we need to do? So I think this is something, again, that is a bit underestimated, but definitely very helpful.
Yeah, I think sometimes if we do the cost-effective analysis, something like that in cities, we really need to take the external cost into the consideration so that we can know if we don't do anything, then the cost could be like so significant, and it's probably will too significant and literally beyond your imagination.
Also socially, of course.
Yes, I agree. Okay, Wayne?
Delta Electronics is focused more on technology, but Delta Electronic Foundation is focused more on communication. So in today's side event, we learned a lot of cases from the Italy and also from the Virginia Polytech. So we can bring these kind of cases to the community of Taiwan, let them know what happened in the world, and then they are try their best to do the energy transition and also care about the just transition. Yeah, this kind of message will allows more people focus on these kind of issues. And if you don't care, you won't action. Yeah, that's what we will focus more on this.
Okay, do so.
Yeah, I think this panel is a very good example for that, how to do it. It's living labs, but the living labs at a huge scale, at a big scale, and also living labs that not just show us that technology is there, but that we can improve the quality of life of people. And don't talk about cost. People are ready to pay if they can afford it. So rich people will pay 10 times more to have a smart cell phone instead of the stupid one. The people that are, and they will pay for that, and just showing that that can be done with the green technologies. On the other hand, for the guys that don't have all these, that cannot afford that, we need to create jobs. So these living labs should be creating jobs, bringing light, bringing transportation where it didn't exist before, and so forth. So that's a key point. We need to be bringing benefits through these living labs and large demonstrations to the population, the whole range, from the richest to the poorest. Once we do that, they will be all for it. If it's just suffering, you have to be more miserable in order to save the planet, it will not work.
Mm. Okay, I think Stephanie is online, so probably we just call her and make her wrap up her remark. Stephanie, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there. I hope it works this time. Maybe just to add, I think what the speakers already mentioned, I think it's also important to make people understand their rights. And we, for example, have had quite some interesting experiences when we engaged citizens, for example, in car-free events, open street events, and really made them understand you actually have a right, to a clean environment in your city. You have a right to be walking and cycling. You have a right to feel well and to have a pleasant urban environment. And I think kind of, helping the citizens to recognize those issues and therefore also starting to demand certain changes in the way that cities, for example, are planned or in the way that solutions are being provided, I think is also a very important aspect.
Thank you, Stephanie. We are really glad that you come back at the final moment. Okay, so yeah, I think our time is gonna expire and we really need to end this session. And thank you once again, our all distinguished speakers. No matter you are virtual or on-site, you just offer us such a diverse perspective and project. And let's just keep moving and acting together. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.